Hello everyone. I will be discussing two conflicting ethical theories, namely utilitarianism and Kantian ethics. We are discussing the following. According to utilitarianism, how are certain activities judged to be qualitatively superior in terms of producing pleasure? In other words, what properties of an action determine its moral worth? How would Kant criticize the utilitarian goal? Now, before we proceed, let us briefly discuss what utilitarianism is. Utilitarianism is a moral theory which advocates for actions that foster happiness and pleasure as opposed to actions that cause harm or unhappiness. It is part of a consequentialist perspective that says what is good or bad depends on its outcome. The hedonic calculus sketched by Bentham in Chapter 4 of his Introduction to the Principles of Morals and Legislation measures an action based on its tendency to produce pleasure or pain, thus the total value of its consequences. There are 7 criteria to be consulted. We will not be going into detail about them due to time constraint. Instead, we will focus and discuss the value of pleasure and what defines pleasurable experiences that utilitarianism ardently focuses on. A pleasurable experience depends on different factors. For Bentham, 2 factors determine a pleasurable experience's value. First, the intensity, and second, the duration. Mill assesses the difficulty of the hedonic calculus and concludes that common people are unable to perform it. He adds to his mentor's conclusion and says that the value of a pleasurable experience depends on 3 factors. Number 1, intensity, number 2, duration, and number 3, unlike his mentor, quality. And he considers mental pleasures as superior to physical pleasures. Mill resolves the ethical dilemma of choosing between difficult options by inventing the competent judge's test. And if one hasn't experienced 2 pleasures, how would they know which one is superior? He says that we must consult people who have enjoyed both. Only they are competent to make this comparison. If they unequivocally desire one more strongly, then it's of higher quality. Therefore, the qualitative superiority of certain activities in producing pleasure depends on the intensity, duration, and quality of the activity itself. It can be physical or mental. However, Mill gives mental activities more value, and in the absence of experiencing a certain pleasure, one may consult the competent judge's test. Now let's see how Kant criticizes the utilitarian goal. Kant says that the concept of happiness is such an indeterminate that although every human being wishes to attain this, he can still never say determinately and consistently with himself what he really wishes and wills. Whereas utilitarianism focuses on happiness and pleasure as guiding principles of morality. Kant argues that happiness in itself could not be the basis of morality. He encourages a life of duty towards others by using one's reasoning or rationality. He thinks of happiness as being an infinite phenomenon that can never be achieved. There will always be something else one desires over what he wishes. In contrast, he says that right and wrong can be defined if one uses their reasoning with a sense of duty towards others. So, Kant goes for morality instead of happiness, and that is probably why his theories have both been controversial and influential at the same time. That's the end of our presentation, and thank you very much for your attention.